Welcome to Debated.
From the underground to the world stage. One stage, countless voices. The conversation that shapes culture, politics, entertainment, and society. Politicians, comedians, musicians, actors, public servants, leaders, unfiltered, unscripted, unmissable. This is Debated Live.
Welcome back to Debated live and direct here on a Saturday. It's going to be an amazing show today. We bring you some interesting and amazing guests from all around the world, and today's no exception. We actually joined by one of the co-founders of Pandora Jewellery. His name is Jesper Nielsen, and you're going to hear his heart-warming story and inspiring story of how he started in business, all the challenges he's been through, and everything that's made him come to the stage today. Before I introduce him, I'll just play a little clip so you can get an idea of our next guest and what he's been up to.
Of Pandora, the man who turned Pandora into a multi-billion-dollar global empire, then lost everything in brutal tax battles, corporate betrayals, and endless court cases and public humiliations. The pain was unbearable. Endless sleepless nights, doubt, feeling like the whole world was against me. I know what it's like to hit absolute rock bottom when you thought you were at the top. But I fought back over years, and I won all my battles. I learned how to take that pain into unbreakable strength.
Every week. Keep it locked.
Apologies there for the technicals. You're watching Debated. Jordan in the place. And as I said before, we have Jesper on the stage today. Jesper, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation, John. It's a pleasure.
No, good to have you on the show. Good to have you. So, Jesper, what we're going to do, we're going to go all the way from the very start. I always think it's always good to go to when people were growing up, what they always wanted to be when they grew up. When I was growing up, when my mom or my dad asked me what I wanted to be, I always said doctor, because when I said doctor, then everybody got excited. And of course, I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I just went for the thing that got everyone excited. But deep inside of you, when you were growing up, take yourself back to when you were like 5 years, 6 years old. What was your burning ambition? Or, when you were 14, 15, what did you actually want to be when you were young?
Yeah, because none of us at that age knows what it means to be an entrepreneur, of course. So you're right. My big dream was not far away from yours, or it was, because my dream was to be able to drive trains, so that's how simple it was. I was always very fascinated watching the big trains driving by where I lived, and I wanted to drive one of them one day. It never happened. Now my son is a pilot, so we got a little bit closer in the family. But anyway, that was my big dream back in the old days.
No, amazing. And now going the way now back to when you graduated from college and everything else, what was your start to your entry into the world of, let's say, job or business? What was your entry into that world?
Yeah, in Denmark it is like this, that we actually, besides our school, always have like a spare time job somewhere, so we and from my personal point of view, I was working in a gas station in my hometown in the evening, taking a shift 2 times a week, so you can fit it into your sports and your school and all these kind of things. And from there on, I actually really didn't move on because I got really intrigued by that kind of business. So after I graduated my high school, I went into an internship in that place, and then actually not a few, very few years later, I showed my talent in that I got my own gas station as a very young guy. 22 years old, I was already running gas station in Denmark. And from there on, I got a feeling about what it meant to make money. I liked that. And then I just stayed in that kind of business, to make my own money for my future. So when I got the hang of something that I really like, meaning in that case retail, and understood about business and how to make money, how one and one sometimes can be five or 10, then I really got into making my own businesses. And from there on, it was all about entrepreneurship, more or less.
That's amazing. You mentioned retail. Back in the day, retail was king. I mean, I started in business in 1998, and in those days, online wasn't king. Like people were just kind of. In fact, people were actually skeptical about people. If you said you had a business on online, they'll be like, "What's that about?" People would be expect it had to be bricks and mortar. So that retail industry was a lot of face-to-face meetings, none of this Zoom stuff. You had to really have a presence on the high street, and you had to really market yourself to get consumers walking in the door, and really make sure you kind of keep them customers are long term. In those early stages of your career, how did you figure it all out? Because most of this stuff, especially entrepreneurship, wasn't taught at school. At uni, you were not taught how to actually run businesses in real time. So how did you figure all that out?
You got a very good point there, John, because I basically think that all business comes out of retail, because at the end of the day, the sales is the key to everything that happens when it comes to any kind of business. No business exists without the sales. And the last, you can say, point to the sales, it will always be the retail at that age. At that days, it was for sure. So of course, for me, it was very learnful to stand on this gas station and sell these different kind of products that we had at that time. We were not so much into convenience as they are nowadays, but we were into having sales, different kind of suites, having service for the cars, fueling the cars, all these kind of things. But what I learned from that was maybe the most important lesson I've learned in my life, is that the relationship between the customer and you are the most important thing. You have to create some kind of trust, some kind of good atmosphere, some kind of good energy. And I made it into, you can say, some kind of reality show running these gas stations, because I was joking, having fun. I have a strong memory. I learned their names, what they're gonna buy. I remember their kids. I remember the dogs. So I was standing there running a whole, you can say, reality stand-up show for 8-9 hours. And the customers, of course, they just loved coming to a place where they were recognized, which I later on learned is extremely important in all kind of businesses. So that basically led to the basic point of what I understood has to be done in order to create the room for the sales, the trust, the people wants to be with you. You have to be likable and all these things. So I learned something very important. And then the basic business itself, debit, credit, selling, inventory, and all these things, you also learn in the retail, running retail stores. So basically, I felt that I took a very, very strong education to understand what is a business. Of course, it was a limited business. At my top, I was running 3 gas stations as a very young guy, 50 employees, making about 7-8 million euro. But and I make good money. I bought my first Porsche with 25. I lived in the first line to the sea with 26. Because I found out if I work from 6 o'clock in the morning to 11 in the evening in that kind of business, you save a lot of salary costs. And if you do a lot of things yourself, the profit increase for yourself. And if I could increase the sale with 10, 15, 20% and keep the cost, I learned all the basics on how to make a business really, really, successful and profitable in a very secure space. Because the business was not something I had to create from A to Z. We all need the fuel, we all needed the different things, but I just tried to put some different things into an events at the Saturday for the kids, making carnival, all these kind of things that I really tested out on, that I later on, when I start to run huge global billion-dollar businesses, I use the same methods towards my customer, towards my employees. So I basically learned all in that little secure space as a young entrepreneur, how this all works. And of course, at that time, I had the scaling mindset, because nobody else wanted to run 3 gas stations. One would normally be enough. It's a franchise system. So of course, why you want to run 3 at the same time? And I said, because I can also run 10, and that's just what, drove me in my very early days into to the global entrepreneur I later became. I learned it the basic hard way, on spot, making the mistakes, paying for them, get up again, do it again, and of course, I was a young man. I was motivated. I wanted a Porsche, with 25. I had all these motivation things that a young man has. That is for a young entrepreneurial man, a very important driver. That he has all these dreams, the car, the house, the boat, the plane, the football club, all these things you dream about. And I went through all these stages, of course, because I always, and I still have, hunger for more. Uh, and that is, of course, in my special entrepreneurial skill is that I'm extremely focused on scales, and I'm never satisfied with what I have. I always, when I won the championship with my sports teams, I was celebrating for 1.5 minutes, looking forward to the next championship because now we have to win a new one. I don't know where I got that from, but that is something that I grew over time. These different kind of things, but it was already there with 2021, 22. I was already having that mindset of wanting more, running
I love
fast,
that.
and working like crazy.
I love that. I love that. You mentioned something that I completely agree with, which is you need to make the customer feel like family. I always say people buy from people. When you mentioned about, you used to, it was like a reality TV show, you made people feel good. I think that's something that's very missing, especially in this social media era, where everything is very much digital based. People don't understand how to make the customer feel like the hero because sometimes you're not actually buying the product. You're actually buying how the product makes you feel or how the experience makes you feel. And I think it's so important for entrepreneurs to understand that because a lot of entrepreneurs have this notion that I am sorting out a problem that exists. And the thing is, you can sort out loads of problems that exist. I mean, people still feel crap. They're still going to feel crap. Even while you're fixing the plumbing, someone can still feel crap about how much you're charging them. So they just have to feel. I mean, people don't feel crap if you're making them feel good and you're asking them to pay more money for it. I mean, if a restaurant makes you feel like a king, and at the end of the day, you want to tip as much as possible, you want to spend as much as possible, you're like, take my money because they made you feel good. And I think that's something that's very missing in today's entrepreneurial society. Did you get that from your parents? Because that's something that, again, that's not taught at school.
Yeah,
Where did you get that from?
that of course I got from home because my home was a very open home to everybody. We were very friendly to everybody around the world. In my little local society I lived in, my father was the chairman of the local sports club. We were like a very, very kind and giving family, and I just scaled that later on to put it into the business model, to be very kind and to be very, open and kind and likable and all these things. So I actually moved on, and I constructed a concept in my business, especially in Pandora, where I just didn't focus on the customer, but I tried to build it the whole way through every single, stage of people related to your business. I even, I say I started with my suppliers. I nursed them upside down. I took them to football games. I traveled them. I informed them about how the business was going, so they feel related to my business. All the suppliers in the early days of Pandora, and later on, of course, we all know that we have to treat our employees like a fantastic. And I had done so many crazy things for my employees over the years, and took the whole family and flew them to Sardinia and have 3 fantastic days after a fantastic result of the year. Just give them everything they want, massage at the spot, food, drinks every day, breakfast in the morning when they came, like a 4-star hotel, drinks every day, Red Bulls and everything all the time, just making them feel comfortable and valued, treat them like they were my family all the time. And that, of course, we let out to every single stage, suppliers, employees, people around you, the authorities, everybody around you, treat them kind, treat them nice. And then, of course, also at the end, it ends up to that all these people together will, of course, fight to give your most important persons, the customers, the ultimate experience of having a company full of good energy. And when you then combine them with a magic product like Pandora, then of course completely crazy things happens, like the Pandora story, where just I always say it did like this, everything me here, the product here, all of us here, and suddenly just made like this, woof, and then it went off like never seen before in the industry, you know. And that was, of course, when you get that feeling. I got that like 5, 6 years into the journey with Pandora, where everything was just, you know, going smooth. You know, the suppliers, the employees, the sales teams, the customers, the franchise partners, you know, they were all treated like kings from our side, you know. I know it costs a little bit on your profit margins. That is what it is. But most of all, it is the effort that you put into it that is the biggest thing, you know, that you actually think about it, that you care about it. Very often it doesn't have to cost very much. It's just showing that you care about your franchisee, that you care about your employee, that you care about your supplier, that you care about your customers and all these things. And that was actually where we made the magic happen, you know, because we didn't invent the Pandora bracelet. It was another company called Troll Beats from Denmark, but they didn't have a Jesper, you know, so they just run the business the normal way, you know, going home at 4 o'clock, not doing the evening shows at all the hotels all around Germany, you know, and all these things that started creating the Pandora brand from the very beginning and the birth of the brand, so to speak. And that was all these small things. Very often people ask me, because I'm one of the few guys that had created a top 100 global brand that is still alive. Many people, they ask me, how did you do it? And I said, how long time do you have? Because it's not one thing. It's 100 different things at the same time, but it's a mindset. You can never do enough for anybody in your business or your suppliers. You can never be good enough. You can always continue and do it better. And that hunger led to, at the end, that all the synergies, they fit together with the Pandora business. And you know, you started experiencing it in the UK and around the world, like in 8, 9, 10. But we've already been running and creating the wonder in Germany from 2002 and onwards. And then we just scaled it. And now, of course, everybody in the whole world knows about Pandora. You know?
No, that's amazing. So it's amazing story. Now you mentioned Pandora there, which we're about to get to. Pandora obviously launched years ago. Like there was a history behind that. And tell us how you became part of Pandora, because it wasn't the actual global historical launch.
No,
It was a specific. Was it the European side of the market? Was it a
exactly.
franchisee, or did you first work for them and then, as Nielsen, and then obviously, you ended up getting shares? How did it all work? Like, how did you get involved with that company? Because it existed before, and it's like it wasn't. I mean, it was there, but it wasn't the beers.
No, exactly.
It was there, and they'd done a lot. They had been very successful across North America, etc., etc., etc. But the European side of things was lagging. So what happened there? Did it call you in firstly as a job, and then you bought shares into it? How did that all happen? What was the story behind that?
Yeah. Actually, I met Mr. Enevoldsen, the founder of Pandora, in 2002, 2003, where we were a company selling for about 500,000 euro. I met him coincidentally at a jewelry show in Denmark, and I was not planning to do any, specific things, but I really liked it and I liked the story behind the product. And I said to them if they had anyone representing them in Germany. And he said no, because we don't speak any German, and we're not a very big company. There were like 3, 4 people working in the company at that time. It had another name as well. It wasn't called Pandora. And I said, but maybe I could go to Germany
So
and
wait, it
try
wasn't
to speak.
called Pandora. It wasn't
No, it
called
was called
Pandora.
Popular AS, we call it at that time, because Pandora was
Wow.
one of the 4 collections that they had in the little wholesale company that they were running. They bought basically, wholesale products from Thailand and sold them to Danish jewelry stores at that time. It was a very tiny little company, little office. Everything was, like millions of other companies around the world. And then I met these guys and I liked the product. This Mr. Enevoldsen, and he had a sales guy for that part of Denmark called Mr. Ramstrup. And I met them and I said, maybe I buy 10 starter kits from Pandora. I will try to take my car, drive to Germany to see if we can sell it also in Germany, because if we could sell it in Germany, I think it could be a much bigger business than just in little Denmark that is only 5 million people. We have 82 million people in Germany. And I took 2 weeks off from my normal business and I went and I drove down to the Hamburg area and I drove around and I sold 3 out of the 10 packages in these 2 weeks. But basically that made me hungry enough to say, I'll do it. I will take the license for Germany. I will be the distributor. I started as a distributor within Germany, and then I started, slowly going around Germany, selling in these products to the jewelry store in a wholesale way of doing it, slowly winning more. And then, of course, I found out that they had a whole system of independent sales reps driving around doing the same as me all around Germany. So I then stopped from trying to sell myself to put into try to find sales reps for every area of Germany. And then from there on, I started growing the business. Of course, we had a problem that we had to scale our production at the same time as we were running. The name Pandora was already there, but it was later on that we changed the whole company's name to Pandora because we got so much success with this collection. So we continued, and from there on, we started to build and run. And then over these years, I was maybe like 80 to 90% of the business of Pandora was through Germany and me. And of course, as we then emerged and got more and more successful, of course, we talked about making some kind of, joint venture cooperation between my company and them. But in the beginning, I was not very interested in that because I liked my business. I like to be independent. But we became really successful. At that time in 7 or 8 in Germany, I was maybe turning over like maybe 100 million euro, 120 million euro. And of course, we got to be interesting for the big Danish ventures, for the big Danish equities. So in April 2008, Mr. Enevoldsen decided to sell the company to a private equity. And of course, they asked if I was interested in joining that, corporation. I said, no, I'm doing fine in Germany. I have my own family company and we sell a lot of Pandora. I'm really happy. We are profitable. We make a lot of money. I had my football club. I had all these kind of things. So I was actually quite well about everything. So I said no, but later on, of course, I could see during 8 and 9 as we moved on that it would make sense for me also to join the big Pandora and be one of the co-founders of Pandora. So what we did during 9, I negotiated with the equity, and at the end of 2009, we published that I also now, as the big distributor, the big also joined Pandora, and that was because we started to getting the idea that maybe we would IPO the company in the coming years. So what we did is that we actually joined forces, so to speak, and make ourselves really, really strong and ready to move forward. The moving out in the world came really like from 7, 8. We opened up the first Pandora store in America in 2008, late 2008. We already had like 35 of them in Germany at that time that I opened up from 2005, 6 up till 2008. But then we started from 2008, after we got in the money from the private equity, we started to really expand out in the world. We increased our production. We got access to a lot of cash. It was not just Mr. Enevoldsen and Mr. Nielsen's small family who was running this business, but we got access to the biggest, you can say, equity of Denmark. And that was, of course, very important for us at that time. And that would also have been the time where you in the UK and around the world would start to notice us. Because then we started to open up the stores in UK, for instance, UK in 9, 10, 11. Whereas, of course, Germany was at that time running hundreds of stores at that time. But then it started, and then we started to spread all around the world. And especially when we succeeded in the Americas, during 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, it just explodes over there. They are maniacs, they are buying like crazy. And the jewelry market over there is sensational. I think we do $1.5 billion in America now in 2025, but it grew very fast. And of course, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And additionally to that, then I took most of Europe under my wings, and I was running the most of the European Pandora business, not UK, but the rest of Europe. I was running more or less. And that has, of course, also meant that my company was growing like crazy. And that actually made me the co-founder of Pandora when we joined forces and I became a part of the bigger Pandora. But for many, many years, I was just, an independent distributor. And then I became a part of the big Pandora when we joined forces, because I had the biggest distribution company in the world. So it would make sense, of course, for me also to join Pandora. At that time, Mr. Enevoldsen has already left the company. So I was the last, real founder guy who was left in the company. And I stayed a couple of years as CEO until I retired in 11. After we IPO'd the business in October 2010. It was enormous. The IPO was 3.5 billion. And it was the biggest listing in my country for 40 years. And there hasn't been one like that since. So of course it was a big achievement for all of us doing that. And of course, due to Mr. Enevoldsen was living in Bangkok and was doing the production, and I was living in Denmark, of course I got the full exposure of all that business in Denmark. So that's why that for the Danish people, they see me as the guy who made Pandora, because I was the guy to the front, and representing Pandora, because Mr. Enevoldsen is a very shy guy. I don't mind stepping forward and doing things. And that was the story, how it all evolved. And then I retired in 2011, I think, mid-11, as a CEO of the European entity, and left the global board. And then you can say that now I just follow them as a part of it's my babies, as I always say.
That's such an amazing story. So you guys, you IPO'd the business in 2010 for 3.5 billion. At that stage, or so when you say you joined, your company joined with them, it was a joint venture. At that stage, how much shares in terms of ownership do you have, and what were you expecting from the IPO? So obviously you IPO 3.5. You are part of the business. What percentage of the business did you own? And did you actually want to relinquish your shares in the business? Of course, you retired in 2011. Was it a forced retirement, or did you actually, think, it was time to move on and just take your money? And obviously taking your money, you're going to have a competitive clause. You can't actually go back into that business. Was it all what you wanted to do, or were you kind of forced out because you were the last one standing? And how much shares did you have during the IPO?
At the IPO, my share value was valued about 370 million euros. So that, I was like maybe 10% of it was at the end mine. We sold 60% in 2008 to the private equity. And then later on, we got diluted, of course, through the IPO as well. But at the end, I stood with a check of around 370 million euro. And I was, we needed to fuel the money into the business at that time as well. So I accepted a deal where I got like 50 to 70 million cash, and then I would have the rest payment, like the rest of us, we were locked up, and I would get the rest payment in 2015. That is how the financials ran around my deal that I made at that time when we exited the business. And actually, I made a contract for 10 years in 2010 for being the CEO of the European entity and a member of the 4-man global board. To stay into the business, because it was I was the last, founder in the business. So it was important when we went out to sell the company to the investors that we stated that it's still standing on solid ground. Jesper is still a part of the business. He will continue because he was the man who constructed the system. He was the man who constructed the Pandora stores. He was the one who made it into retail. He was the mind behind the whole branding behind Pandora. So he's still stepping in. The other founder, he is leaving because he was also significantly older than me, like 20 years older than me. So that makes sense that he slowly get out of the business. He already left around 9. He said I had enough, and he had, and he left the business. He was not interested in like me going on this, roller coaster ride, creating this global brand. But what then happened, of course, when we got the new ownership, from the equity. It's not easy for a founder but as soon as in the first couple of years, I could keep it in hand because I still was running my own entity of Pandora. But of course, when I really joined forces with them, I got into struggles as an entrepreneur because the mindset of these guys compared to me, I was much different. I was all about people, all about, we didn't need to take the last 3% profit margin if we could make our customers and our employees and our suppliers happy. Don't push it, I said all the time. But of course, they came with a whole other mindset. They want to squeeze every single euro out of the business that they could to the investors and the shareholders, because that was what they were measured at. And of course, the financial situation of me and the other people left in Pandora was, of course, much different because, I was flying my own private jet. I was running the biggest football club in the country. I was having 10 different cars, big house in Mallorca, and they were getting a salary every month that, of course, not in any way and they were looking at me coming to the meetings in my Learjet, and that made it all very awkward and a bad atmosphere. And I just came to the conclusion after we IPO'd and everything went fine that maybe it would be time that I leave the business to the new ownership, and I could position
That's
And
that's
so,
why
and then
I
I stepped
think
in.
we've lost Jesper there. I think we're going to get him back. Jesper was just talking to us about the story of Pandora Jewelry, and he was mentioning how, the company got merged with his company, how the company went on IPO in 2010, and they raised, I mean, it was over 3.5 million. 3.5 billion, sorry, 3.5 billion. And then he left the company in 2011. We're going to see whether we can get him back. I think he's got some technical difficulties. But what an amazing story he's talking about there. Hopefully you guys are finding it very inspiring. You're watching the Debated show where we're covering Jesper Nielsen and his rise as co-founder of Pandora Jewelry. Yes, I think we got Jesper back. We got Jesper back on there. That's amazing. So Jesper, before you left, you were talking about what had happened was that while you were settling in with the company, you were coming into the offices, flying with private jets. You already made it to a very successful level, and you sense that it wasn't on the same level, um, and you sense that it was time for you to kind of move on, as it were. Uh, I think we're still having technicals. We're still having technicals with Jesper. We'll see if we can get him back in a second. Don't forget, guys, you can subscribe, like, and you can also email us if you want to find out much more about the show. All the details on Vilvix TV. That's youtube.com/@VilvixTV, VilvixTV.com. And for more information, we're live every single week with loads of guests, loads of businesses, loads of exclusive interviews, giving you what it takes. We're going to go for a short ad break, and after the ad, we will come back to you with Jesper for the second part of the interview. Very, very, very amazing interview where we're talking about the rise of Pandora. Right, we are back again. We're gonna see whether we can try and get back. Yep, yeah, I think Jesper is back. Jesper, can you hear me all right? You're good on your side? Can you hear me all right on your side? Yeah, I think he needs to sort out his technicals. We're gonna go back for a short ad again just to make sure Jesper can sort out his technicals. I don't know if you can hear me. Welcome back to the Debated show. Apologies, all the guys watching and everyone's watching the show. If you're having a little, where I think there's a lot of technicals, and that's at weekends. Sometimes there's a lot of technicals at the weekend. We've been trying to get Jesper back on. We will try and get him back on once he's sorted out. We were talking about his rise with Pandora, how he built that company, especially the European division, and took it to a level where it was successful. Jesper, you're back on. Can you still hear us? Can you hear us on your side? I can hear you now. Can you hear us? Can you hear us on your side?
Very bad connection.
Jesper, can you hear us? I think we're gonna go back again. Can you hear us on your side? I'm not sure he can hear us. So we will try and sort Jesper out. We were talking about his rise to the industry. I hope you guys followed the part one of the show. What we're going to try to do is to get technical sorted so that we can come back on the second half of the show. So we can sort that out on the second half of the show. Keep it tuned. So that we can sort out the second part of the show very well. All right, we're gonna go to a short ad and we're gonna come back on the other side and we'll try and sort out the sound. So you keep it tuned to the show. We're gonna come back on the other end.